They had ended 4 months of touring in a frenzy of Chanel and Schiaparelli. "And if it all settles down," Francis, as Angus, said. "Can it ever be a mistake to visit Paris?" Mrs. B's eyes twinkled, and he saw how easily Mr. Bingham, whoever he was, must have fallen. During Mrs. Bingham's recitation on family, fashion, and all things français, the Philadelphia trio had begun with their broth, and Francis tried to take note of which spoon they had chosen. He thought he was being clever, but as he caught the eye of the silk-sheathed Marian Walter, she stared back at him with feline hunger. His blood surged, a jolt from groin to gullet, and he looked away, only to meet a similar gaze from her brother, Alex, a small man neatly encased in a tuxedo. Horace Walter, much older and rounder than the others, was already clouded by his first 2 cocktails. He had eyes only for the next course. The Walters were returning from a trip through Italy and Germany, where they had taken part in a brisk tourist trade catering to Americans eager to see firsthand the proper way to run a modern nation. They had rendezvoused in Le Havre with Alex, whose itinerary had taken him through the seaside resorts of the Mediterranean. Apparently, there was a Mrs. Alex still on the continent. Something about friends in Biarritz who simply could not part with her until after some festival or other. He seemed unfazed by her whereabouts. His only mention of her was accompanied by a jet of cigarette smoke. But the Binghams tisk-tisked and fretted about how lonely he must be without her. Conversation turned to Sir Angus, his reasons for traveling to New York, and oh, by the way, was he traveling alone? Francis explained that he was escorting his younger brother to New York for medical attention. That much was true, though he transformed Michael into Malcolm to keep his alias intact. Young Malcolm had been grievously injured while fox hunting, he told them, and there wasn't a doctor in Britain or Ireland who could help him. "His case has baffled the finest medical minds in London, but I have high hopes for what the American doctors can tell us," he said, taking a swipe at the old empire while goosing the national pride of his companions. He quickly saw that his story had elicited another reaction. Anisette, who had lips like a bow on a box of sweets, practically cooed in admiration. This Sir Angus was both landed aristocrat and benevolent protector, a Scottish Mr. Darcy, minus the unpleasantness of the first 30-odd chapters. "It's admirable," she said. "What you're willing to do for your brother." "The question, Miss Bingham, is what wouldn't I be willing to do for my brother?" Francis was growing more confident with the quality of his counterfeit Scotsmanship. As the entrees were presented, he asked the Binghams what news they had from home. "I must confess that I devote little time to ex-colonial affairs," he said. But the truth was that life in Dublin had offered only a moviegoer's knowledge of New York. Newsreels, The Thin Man, 42nd Street, A Night at the Opera. He should have known more about the city. His older brother, Martin, had emigrated years before, but Francis knew little of his life. He was a musician, married, had a child or 2, and lived in a place unmusically called the Bronx. Over the years, communication between the brothers had gone from strained to non-existent. Martin knew nothing of Francis's escape, Michael's condition, or their father's recent death. Of course Francis would seek him out, but first he had to decide what to tell him. Martin was sure to have questions that Francis wasn't ready to answer. But while Martin could be difficult, the Americans were easy. He had assumed that they would be a uniformly anti-royalist lot. What about their man George Washington and Thomas Jefferson with his all men are created equal talk? Surely the Americans would have been bred with a distaste for crowned heads and any hint of duke or earlishness. But no. Thanks to Francis's accent and the rumor of a peerage, the Americans aboard the Britannic, the women especially, were drawn to him like crows to corn. And Francis, for his part, was playing the peacock.